I was able to watch Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, so let's start off with everything I liked about it. And for starters, one of the things I liked about this movie was that I liked how this movie was able to expand on the world of this universe. Because we only got that in like the first movie, and then the rest kind of just added onto it. This movie takes its time and adds new lore and different types of stuff to the table and adds it to this universe and really fleshes out this universe even more. On that note too, I enjoy this villain. Now, I have problems with the way the story goes with the villain and everything involved with it, but I do really enjoy the villain of this story. Like I said, I have my problems with it, but I do think generally it is a strong villain. It's nice to see the Ghostbusters back in New York City, because in Afterlife, I think they were in Oklahoma, if I'm correct. I'm not sure, but I think they were in Oklahoma. This time around, they're back in New York, where basically every other Ghostbuster movie takes place in New York City. And it's nice to see the crew, like the new Ghostbusters with the old Ghostbusters, reunite back in New York City. It's a nice way to see all that. This movie's just a fun time. It has a ton of problems, which I'm about to dive into, but the movie's just a fun time. You can enjoy the movie for what it is. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but it's not great. Which leads me into everything I didn't like about the movie. And for starters, everything that made Afterlife such a great movie and such a fantastic kind of send-off to certain stuff, all of that's not in this movie. This movie basically is a big downgrade from everything that made Afterlife great. So technically, this movie's kind of like Ghostbusters 2. The first one was super good, but then the second one was kind of a drop in quality. That follows for these two movies. Afterlife was great. This one, not so much. One of the standpoints for me is the comedy in here. This one, they crack a joke every few seconds. Well, they try to. Not all of it lands. There's a lot of jokes in here. Out of the 90% of the jokes in here don't land. I feel like Afterlife and the first Ghostbusters had a lot of good comedy in it, but that just doesn't follow into this movie, where they try to crack a joke every few seconds, and most of them just don't land. Also, a big thing that you guys should really know before going into this movie is it's not really like the trailer. I feel like the trailer kind of promised us more nostalgia and a lot more of the villain, which I did say I have problems with the villain, so I'll kind of dive into that now. Other Ghostbuster movies, basically the beginning of the movie, you're introduced to the villain, and they're basically the main villain throughout it. This one, they kind of do like a kind of detective mystery kind of story where they have to like solve the lore behind this villain, and then they have to learn how to defeat it, stuff like that. So they're kind of like building out brick by brick on where to get to this villain, and then by the time it like all pays off, it's not the same, because the trailer made it feel like the villain was going to be throughout the movie, and we're going to get a lot of the original cast in this, and a lot of original feels that the first Ghostbusters had. That's not really what happens, which I will dive into as we go throughout this. One thing in here, like I said, brick by brick, there's a lot of slow build-up in here to the kind of payoff. They're introducing a lot of stuff at the same time, and you just get slow build-up to all that detective kind of solving these mysteries together and just slowly working your way up there, slow at some parts, which definitely could have been fixed up because you're taking your time with the story, which I feel like with all the different plot points you're introducing, you definitely should kind of rush things a little bit faster, but not too much. That's why I also think that this movie definitely needs to be longer. You're introducing a lot of plot points and a lot of characters at the same time that you don't really get a lot of time to really take your time with each individual character. You're just kind of putting them off to the side and slowly building up this big bad when there's a lot of plot points just building and merging together slowly that they don't really work, and the movie needs to be longer to really extend all these plot points together, because there's a lot of stuff in here that by the end, certain character arcs are completely rushed. Like one character arc, there's a single line at the beginning of the movie, And there was another scene in the movie, which was near the beginning as well, but then was resolved at the end with like a full hour and a half in between the movies since we last discussed that plot point. A big gap. Movie needs to be longer to really stress out all these plot points, all these character arcs, everything. Kind of fix all the problems that we had with the movie. The thing on the plot points, there's a lot going on because, like I said, an hour and a half goes by in the movie from that first character arc. And with that first character arc, we were introduced to a certain character, but we don't see that character again until an hour and a half later. Any plot points to remember with all these certain characters and all these new characters being introduced, which is why this movie is trying to do too much in a short runtime. Another thing to support that is there's too many characters to remember. With a short runtime, you're rushing everything. So they introduce a small thing at the beginning, but you don't see them again till the end. Which is why everything in this movie just feels rushed. Doesn't really work. Low build up too. It doesn't really help. It needs to be longer. The pacing needs to be fixed. Those two things alone makes this movie better. And fix up the comedy could make it better too. But just overall, Afterlife is a way better movie. This one basically falls into the same pit Ghostbusters 2 ran into and is a big disappointment. Out of 10, I'll give Ghostbusters Frozen Empire a 5.5 out of 10. Thank you guys for watching, and if this video interests you, maybe these ones on the side will too. See you guys next time.